Yes, good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everyone who has attended this webinar. I'm Samuel and really glad to start this webinar by Kausal in collaboration with the City of St. Paul and Longmont. Today, we will learn about how the cities make climate plans actionable. So the title of the webinar is Turning Climate Goals into Action. I'm pretty sure we are all excited to hear more about it. And here I will just quickly show who are the panelists today. So first we have Jonas, who is the Chief Business Officer of Kausal. And we have Russ, who is the Chief Resilience Officer from the City of St. Paul. And Francie, who is the Sustainability Coordinator of the City of Longmont. Thank you very much for all your participation here. Some housekeeping rules. The webinar is recorded, so you don't have to ask that later on. The link will be shared after the webinar. Q&A is at the end of the webinar, but you can post your questions using the Q&A button in Zoom anytime. The chat, the camera, and the mic of the attendees are disabled in this webinar. And if you have any further questions that we cannot address in this webinar, please direct them to the email address here, info@kausal.tech, info@kausal.tech. So with that, I see that people have joined the webinar slowly coming in. But yeah, without further ado, I think we will continue with the next item. So Jonas will give a brief overview of what Kausal is so that everyone will be on the same page. And then we'll pass on to the highlight of the event, which is Russ and Francie sharing their experiences. So Jonas, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Samuel. So yeah, first of all, really happy to be here. Honored to have Russ and Francie with me. Thanks a lot for joining and sharing your views on how to track, monitor, and communicate your climate work. And of course, you guys have been adopting the Kausal platform, so it's really interesting for everyone, myself included, to hear how your experiences have been and hear how Kausal has been helping in that work. Maybe as a quick background introduction into Kausal, we are a company based in Helsinki, Finland, but working globally across 3 continents in 8, soon 9 countries. Our goal is to help the cities of all sizes be more efficient in their climate work, enabling accuracy, more transparency, and more collaboration, bringing in all the people throughout the city organizations, different units to work together on the climate action plan. We were founded a bit more than 3 years ago. We started off as a not a very typical background for a software company. We started out as a in-house project inside the city of Helsinki. And when the city originally launched the platform, there was a lot of interest from other regions and cities, so it was set up as a separate company to be able to develop the platform further and provide it to cities all across the globe now. The issues cities face are quite similar in every country. There's a lot of challenges in implementing a program as kind of overarching as a sustainability or climate action plan, where it's a few people sitting in the climate team, often trying to coordinate the work of their colleagues across a very kind of siloed organization structure that cities, despite best efforts, tend to be. So that was kind of our starting point, how to help cities tackle this collaboration, internal collaboration side, how to make sure everybody knows what is happening next, how to move ahead in the actions that they are in charge of, how to easily report on the progress and measure that progress and make the life easier for each individual, maybe just spending a few hours a month on any specific climate action, but also especially helping the climate professionals do their work efficiently, so that it doesn't end up being a kind of a secretary role where professional climate people are just copy pasting pieces of information to Excel workbooks and kind of automating much of that, and then being able to use all of that real-time data that's managed efficiently to produce a real-time views that can be made public for everybody to follow transparently, but easily then used also for pulling out any kind of reporting that you need to do both internally and externally. So that's some of the kind of basic issues that still to date are priority, kind of trying to make it easy for cities to navigate the increasingly complex world of managing climate and sustainability work, and all the reporting and communications that go along with that. But I would maybe like to pass it over to the first actual speaker. I'll maybe come back to some specific functionalities and features of the Kausal platform, but maybe it's more interesting to hear the views of a city using the platform already and quite far along and well experienced in climate work. So yeah, Russ, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jonas. Much appreciated. Glad to be with you all today. Again, my name is Russ Stark. I'm the Chief Resilience Officer in the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, here in the kind of center of the North American continent. And I've been in this role for about 5.5 years now. Just briefly, a little bit of an unusual trajectory in that I was a former city council member, policymaker, who moved over to the kind of implementation side. And my role is actually in the mayor's office, and I lead the city's climate action sustainability work from here, but work with a team of city staff who are across departments to coordinate our actions. And St. Paul's a city of a little over 300,000 people, so kind of a mid-sized American city in a pretty large metropolitan area. The Minneapolis-St. Paul area has a little over 3 million. And from our perspective, we've been somewhat of a leader in climate action sustainability, but I don't think very many people know about our story. And one of my first projects in my role was to develop what's now our Climate Action Resilience Plan, which was adopted by City Council in December of 2019. And as you all will recall very well, a few months later, you know, the world changed and everything kind of shut down with the pandemic, which did slow our progress a bit in terms of using the new plan as a tool for action. But the plan did set science-based targets at the time to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030, down to net zero by 2050, as well as for the city to get to net zero in operations by 2030. As we all now know, some of those targets are a little out of date. But during the public engagement process about the plan, we kept waiting for the opposition to the plan to appear, maybe from some segments of the private sector or business community or elsewhere, community members who didn't think the work was necessary, and it really never materialized. The plan ended up being very popular. People encouraged us to do more and faster. And so for those of you who haven't gone through that sort of a public engagement process, I think it can be very eye-opening to see kind of where your residents actually are on issues like this. Some of the things that we've been working on, and then I will jump right into our dashboard. In early 2021, we created our Climate Justice Advisory Board. We have a strong ethic leading from Mayor Melvin Carter to really think about equitable approaches to everything that we do at the city, including our climate action work. And so the role of this board is to help the policymakers really figure out the best ways to ensure that those who are most vulnerable to the coming climate changes are thought of first in the way that we approach our climate action work. Around that same time, if you did a Google search for city climate dashboards in the US, you would have come up with just a few. In my experience. So this is a couple of years ago now, say 2021. And we started thinking about turning our plan into some kind of public facing feature where we could show people the impact that we were having, the progress we were making toward our goals, all those sorts of things. And we thought the dashboard would have two main purposes. First, to track and report on the actions we were taking and the impacts that they were having, but equally to create a tool for the public to hold us and future people in our positions accountable to the commitments that the city had already made. And I think those kind of dual purposes really drove our thinking about the structure of the dashboard itself. Ironically, it was about that same time that I received a relatively cold email from the Kausal team, and the timing just ended up being perfect for us to explore a partnership and the creation of the dashboard. We got to work on the dashboard in the summer of 2022, and it just launched this Earth Day in April. And I will open it up here momentarily and kind of peruse with you. But I just wanted to mention that for me personally, the key thing to keep in mind about a dashboard is that it's only as useful as your ability to keep it up to date. And so alongside the thinking about what you want to communicate and how, I think equally critical is how you're going to kind of keep the information fresh and who's going to be doing that work. And we got some good advice from Kausal about how to think about that as well, because they had been through that process multiple times. We realized early on that the actions and recommendations recommended in our climate action resilience plan, which we half jokingly refer to as its acronym CARP, because that seems kind of silly, didn't line up perfectly well with the actual real day-to-day actions that we are taking. And so for a while, we struggled with how to portray the actions that we're taking relative to the recommendations in the plan, of which there are 146. And for those of you out there with plans, they're full of recommendations and best practices and all those sorts of things. And we landed on this, what I'll show you momentarily, sort of a structure of focusing on the actions that we are taking, but in the context of the plan, and then cross-referencing the specific recommendations in the plan to those actions that we're taking. I'll say this is a living document. We're still thinking about ways of making it better, even though we just launched in April. And a quick shout out to Ana de la Torre, who was really our project manager for most of the last year, and I think really did a wonderful job with putting all the pieces together in our dashboard. So you can see kind of the front page of the dashboard here, just really giving people the most basic information about what this tool is about. A lot of thinking went into these headers and drop-down menus and exactly kind of the arrangement of them. But as we scroll down, we really thought that maybe the single most important piece of information people would want to know is the progress that we're making in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. If you look at this graph, it looks like we're making really fantastic progress. And I'll say we are making progress, but I'm confident that because of the pandemic in 2020, those 2020 emissions numbers are deflated from what they would otherwise have been. And that as we're actually collecting our 2021 information and finalizing it just now, I have a feeling that those numbers are going to have gone back up a bit. But you can see, very good progress toward our overall 2030 goal showing up so far. The couple of tools here for just tracking all of the actions that we're currently taking, 47 of them. And if you hover over the pieces, you can see those that are in process, completed, in planning phase, whether they're on time, again, completed or late, and then kind of how recently have these actions been updated. And then it dives right into what we have called our 6 categories of action. Again, a lot of thought into kind of exactly what these categories should be. And maybe not the same categories that every community would end up having, but kind of based on our priorities, our work, and our plan. Something I think is maybe somewhat unique is that we also wanted to share some direct links to aspects of our climate plan in the dashboard itself, particularly things where people could learn more about what's going on in the local community in terms of where vulnerable populations in the community are, what parts of the city are more vulnerable to the effects of climate change, where the greenhouse gas emissions in St. Paul come from, but also actions that people can take to be a part of the solution. And so I'll just walk through a few of our actions to give you a sense. So under sustainable transportation, you can see the actions that fall under that heading. You can, it's a very brief description of the, 31% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation sector in St. Paul. You can read a little bit more in terms of a framework for how we think about those emissions through these drop downs. But we wanted these kind of main pages to be relatively uncluttered. And then you can look at any individual action. So one of our most prominent recent actions is the little over a year ago, we launched a network of public EV charging stations that sits alongside a new electric car share program, where some of the chargers are dedicated to the new electric car share program, some are for public charging. And so you can see this EV car share program action. You can see that we're making progress, that it's in process, probably never be completed. It's one of those actions that we hope will be ongoing. You can see over here on the right that it links to a couple of the specific recommendations in our climate action plan. We call that the climate plan key. We highlight the person who's primarily responsible for this program and contact information in case people have additional questions or follow-up. I have to say this feature of having a contact person with a photo and contact information is pretty unusual across the city's enterprise. And that was actually an idea that came from Kausal that we embraced. You can see the little image here of our car share program called EV. And then description of the program, its benefits, and then one of our performance indicators is the usage of this car share program. We know that car share usage actually leads to an overall reduction of greenhouse gas emissions because it requires people to own fewer cars, and of course these vehicles are EVs, and so we're seeing really healthy growth in that program. And then I'll just walk through one other action as an example. And you can see by going to the actions header, you sort of see all of the actions lined up by category. And here I will jump into the Green Revolving Loan Fund at the city, which is essentially the city using our own cash reserves as a fund to lend into energy efficiency projects in city buildings, and then replenishing the fund with those energy savings. So again, you can kind of read a description of how that program works. Progress has been measured. Some of this information is out to date, and newer information is actually still being gathered so that we can update some of this very soon. But just to give you a sense, again, the contact person, the ways in which it relates back to the climate plan. And then just one other action that I wanted to share. And this actually came from public feedback. Members of our advocacy community here locally wanted a place where they could easily reference the commitments and the actions that the city has taken, whether that's mayoral or city council. And so we put all of those city council resolutions that have been taken, especially over the last several years, in one place with links, as well as mayoral commitments and actions that have been taken. So again, a total of 47 of these actions so far And we're hoping to, of course, build on that, especially given that we have 146 recommendations in our plan. And I will stop right there, and I appreciate your attention and look forward to further dialogue about dashboards. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. So we will continue with Francie. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. My name is Francie Jaffe. I'm a sustainability coordinator with the City of Longmont, which is in Colorado. We're a smaller city, about 100,000 in Colorado, and we're actually in the process. Our dashboard is not live yet, though I will walk through our kind of draft dashboard at this time. I would say similar to Russ, we were looking for a transparent location where we can show progress. We had a previous online version of that was just showing our indicators on both our sustainability plan as well as our Envision Longmont multimodal comprehensive plan, as well as we would give action updates in a report. And this created we've been wanting to update our dashboard, and this created an opportunity to integrate those and better tie our indicators to our actions, as well as integrate some of our greenhouse gas modeling as well. So we've been in the process of developing that and hoping once it is launched, will be a great location that the community, city council members, even staff can go to and better understand kind of the interconnection status on actions, where we need to focus, etc. So I'm going to share my screen. So we're using the multi-tool feature that Kausal offers, because we do have a lot of plans, and I would say this isn't even all the plans we have for the city. But Envision Longmont is our multimodal and comprehensive plan, and then our sustainability plan are our big guiding plans for the city. Since the sustainability plan is passed, we developed a climate action recommendations report after there was a community-led effort for climate emergency resolution. And then we've also developed some more kind of action-based plans that focus on specific topic areas, like our beneficial building electrification plan and transportation roadmap. But this doesn't even include, like, we have a water efficiency master plan and other efforts. But there's a lot of interconnection. So we really wanted to use the multi-plan feature so that you could either dive into a plan or see the connections. So on the main page, you can access actions, and let me just wait for that to load. And every single plan is organized in its own way, but there are overarching connections. So Kausal created this filter for us called overarching themes, and you can kind of filter across the plans. So like transportation is a big topic area, and you can see that all the actions come up from our sustainability plan, our transportation roadmap, our climate action recommendations roadmap, and those different connections. So you can kind of look at a big picture, or you could dive into a specific plan. We also, because we found that a lot of our plans have overlapping actions, like our Envision Longmont plan had a action to create a sustainability plan, and our sustainability plan had an action to create a beneficial electrification plan. So they're very interconnected. So how we're handling that to both make it a little easier to navigate, but also so we don't have to report in different locations, that if I go to this action, the transportation roadmap, it doesn't have a lot of information, but really it has kind of the basic information that Russ was kind of highlighting in some of his actions from the plan, but really tries to direct someone to where we're tracking it more extensively. So making use of that related actions, I'll probably add a link because this is not live yet. I don't have the final links. Once we go live, I might embed some links, but for now, you can click on the related actions, and then here you can see them much more in depth detail. We are also using that contact persons, as well as using more information where you can learn more. So if someone wanted to focus on a plan, they could have on the main page, you could click, or there's a drop down up here. So if I wanted to focus on our sustainability plan, you can go into that plan, see how that plan itself is organized, as well as dive into actions, indicators, and then every plan page we have a glossary. We know a lot of our terms we use can be not or technical or not used every day. I feel like every day we're just trying to explain to people what sustainability means. So we thought the glossary was a great feature. And then we're working on indicators. I won't show our indicators too extensively, similar to kind of how Russ highlighted. We're working to interconnect them with our actions. One of the reasons we're working right now to refine them. We've had a lot of indicators across both Envision Longmont and our sustainability plan. And we're using this update as a way to refine the indicators that we present to the community. So we haven't finished that yet. But if I go to one of our actions, we'll have a similar kind of that connected indicator to the action at the bottom. We've also really liked, there's this task feature that's offered. So we have a description update, but instead of kind of using these tasks to say what has been done in the past, what's ongoing as an element to provide information and kind of updates to the community. And then further greenhouse gas modeling, we're actually working with the Kausal Paths scenario tool. So on our main page, you can access the scenario tool. So this is a tool we thought would be both helpful to staff in understanding and modeling how our actions will impact our projected greenhouse gas emissions. We've had an internal tool, but we do have folks in the community and our city council who really want to dive into greenhouse gas modeling. So this offers that opportunity to look at it, but also kind of create your own scenarios. So if we go to actions, it's just taking a bit to load. There we go. If we go to actions, we have a set climate action recommendations, which is the actions that we have been modeling, or you could turn an action off if you didn't want to see, like, let's say we stopped updating our building code every 3 years. You could turn that off and see how that impacted the modeling. You could also dive into, like, if I click on this on beneficial building electrification for residential, you can really dive into it. So at the top, we have like the summary of the greenhouse gas impact. We also have the impact on our energy usage, but you can really follow along on how, from like starting with electricity replaces natural gas, and then follow that down to show how that would impact our greenhouse gas emissions down here. And so both the selected scenario as well as that shaded green line is where it would be without that action. So to really highlight which actions have the greatest impact. I do want to say we're probably not going to do that this year, but I think something we've chatted about maybe doing in future years is that this is really focusing on greenhouse gas emissions, but we also are a big important component of our sustainability plan is to center equity and economic vitality and environmental sustainability. And we've been working to try to highlight that. So one thing, this is very focused on greenhouse gas emissions, but in the future, I think things we're considering could we model the financial impacts. Some of our actions like energy efficiency maybe might not have as much of a greenhouse gas impact because of our goals to transition to 100% renewable electricity, but they can really be beneficial for household bills, or electrification has indoor air quality benefits. So we haven't fully figured out how to model that, but I think that's something we might pursue in the future. And then if I go back to our main page, I think that's something we also are hoping as we finalize our indicators, not just have our greenhouse gas emissions highlighted on the front page, but other key indicators. Is there a good social equity indicator that we could highlight? Or should we also highlight some indicators that relate to climate adaptation. How are we doing with conserving water over time? Linked to other, actually I had an idea by seeing Russ's presentation about how we could also link to our climate risk and resilience map that we're in the process of developing. And I think we're also kind of hoping to learn a little bit more from when we do launch this to the community. How can we improve it? We've been in lots of conversations about how to make this ADA accessible. And we're in the process of translating the entire website into Spanish. So this will be a fully bilingual website. So we're hoping that this will be accessible to everyone in our, well, we have more languages than just English and Spanish in our community, but as a starting point, and hope to once we launch it, to get feedback and be able to continue to build and update it and be a resource to the community. So with that, that's my quick overview.
Thank you so much, Francie. Yeah, just a quick, some words to the audience. You can ask questions with the Q&A button in Zoom. So the chat is disabled, but you can post your questions anytime with the Q&A button, and we will have the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. But right now, I just want to pass the floor again to Jonas to maybe comment a little bit on the product side, and as well as, feel free, Jonas, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks, Samuel, and especially Russ and Francie on a very interesting presentations. I always learn a lot myself listening to this. Just focused on the platform development side so much that it's always interesting to also hear on good examples of actions you are taking, and it's really inspiring. The things I noted down to myself from Russ's and Francie's presentation, there was the customization is one side. I mean, that's what we kind of focus on, being able to make sure that both the Kausal Watch and Kausal Paths tools that we provide are really customizable to each city's particular context and situation. So all the categorizations, the metadata, terminology, the structure and hierarchy, and everything is very customizable, and something that we always kind of want to make sure that we don't enforce like a one size fits all and propose like how you should structure and build your plan. Of course, we can always share good practices and want to share good practices and foster this knowledge sharing between cities. That's one side of the transparency aspect, also of kind of making these. If we're talking about the scenario and Kausal Paths side, making this calculation modeling kind of in the spirit of open source development, making it also visible and transparent to everybody how things are calculated, and then for cities to be able to compare each other, not only what the actions others are taking, but also how do they how are others approaching the impact assessment side, and learning from each other and sharing those is a big part of our philosophy. And I think kind of going forward, as Francie was saying, it's not just about the greenhouse gas emissions, but also the financial implications. We're doing the first iterations now of what it would look like to visualize the long-term operating expenditure, capital expenditure, net savings from the climate work, and also the health impact side, how to understand, visualize, communicate better how many years of life expectancy is the sustainability work adding to the population, and taking these into the kind of impact and scenario work makes it much more powerful in the future when inevitably there's a rising kind of climate denialism movement going ahead. Glad to hear from Russ that it didn't happen political opposition the first time around when you were coming up with your CARP, but I think it's a growing trend that we have people questioning and there needs to be kind of more open information. I think the openness and transparency is part of the answer there to be able to justify. On the other hand, kind of the ongoing investments that need to be made to justify them, not only with GHG emission reductions, but also just the pure financial sense of making them, and also then the health impacts, how much healthier lives will people live if we do those investments. So it's not just the GHG and kind of making things transparent kind of puts the burden of proof on the people who are criticizing it, and you can kind of be more confident with the modeling and calculations. But yes, the scenario work, I mean, we can be also taken further in the sense that it can be scope 3 emissions also. That's what we're doing with the city of Zurich in Switzerland. So there's a lot of directions that you can expand and what else did I note down? Yeah, in terms of customization, you can of course we kind of encourage more openness, but it's not necessary to have everything on the public dashboard. For example, many cities prefer not to have the contact details of the people in charge of each action visible, so it's not, it doesn't need to be. But I think the experiences so far among cities who have done it is that they are not receiving too many contacts or spam emails or anything like that. But of course, it's a cultural shift always towards more transparency, and you just have to push the envelope a bit at a time. So yeah, I think those are the notes I made from those presentations. So I guess we can, Samuel, if you have any questions coming in, we can, or also sure. I guess Russ and Francie, if you want to interject or comment, it would be great to make a discussion out of it.
Well, shall we proceed with the Q&A? I see some questions here, and I think will spark a lot of discussion as well. So the first question has been answered as well, but let's just repeat it and discuss. Russ, how much staff time is dedicated per month to keeping your dashboard updated? So maybe, Francie, do you want to elaborate or just retell your answer here?
Yeah, I know the question was directed to Russ, and we're a little bit of an unknown, but we're hoping to just ask folks twice a year to provide updates. And we do a twice a year report to our city council. So we were already asking for those updates and asking people to fill out a spreadsheet, but then in another location, indicators. So we're actually hoping it will save staff time by streamlining the process. And I know there was a question about actually showing how you do it, and I think that could actually be helpful, but I'll let Russ respond.
Yeah, I would say unknown to some degree because we just launched. I don't want to underestimate for folks the amount of work that went into the creation of the dashboard. Certainly in terms of that kind of central coordination function, Anna, as our project manager, was probably working on it about half time for 6 months or so, with my help and input as well, and others. For our key contacts, those responsible for updating each action, I would say it really varies by action. In some cases, we only get annual data, And so it makes sense for that to just be a once a year update. In other cases, it may be a physical construction project that we want to highlight, and those need to obviously be updated more frequently to be reasonable and up to date. So I would estimate on the higher end, maybe 15 to 20 hours annually for upkeep. But depending on the action, it may have been as much as a few days work to get the action kind of framed up and in a good starting place. And I think we probably did underestimate the amount of work that it was going to take to get to launch, but feel really good about the amount of work that'll be involved in the maintenance.
Yeah, is it Russ? Would it be fair to say that kind of, even though the platform it's flexible to accommodate to whatever structure and terminology and hierarchy and so on that you want, it at the same time it kind of forces you to rethink, as you maybe kind of referring to in your presentation, that you kind of go back and then have to end up spending time to reword things and regroup things and so on. So that's probably a lot of the kind of work time that ended up going into it. But I guess worthwhile work. I mean, it then allows you to rethink what you're actually doing, and especially how you want to be communicating it. So not extra work, I would say, probably, but rather work that would have been worthwhile.
That's right. And, Francie mentioned, there are different forms of reporting that were already happening, depending on each action and kind of how that's organized in your city. In our case, one of the things that we realize is that we're doing this reporting internationally through CDP, as well as within the US through the what's called the ACEEE and their sustainability scorecard. And yet we didn't have a way of making that information clear and accessible to our own residents. And that was one of the big ahas, like, we're spending all this time reporting anyway. We might as well make it accessible to folks right here in St. Paul.
Right. Thank you, Francie, Russ, and Jonas. I was thinking there is a related question that Francie already mentioned. Can you please show or describe the steps a staff member takes to provide an update on an action? So maybe just to show how easy it is, or at least it's easier than the previous method. Francie, you're saying that you wanted to share something.
I think what sharing now works well.
Yeah.
Though I do before you get started want to highlight that it just uses the same like city login that you already have. So I really like people don't have to remember a different login. They can just log in through their city email. So I just thought that was a kind of an easy way for folks to access.
Right. Yeah. Russ or Jonas, do you want to add more on that?
Well, as you're moving around there in the kind of back end of the tool, it is pretty self-explanatory. We went through a number of iterations and kind of frankly asking Kausal if some different functionality was possible. And I have to say Kausal was very responsive to trying to meet all of our needs. There are some things that were still not possible in the short term, but that they're going to continue to work on, and we hope to kind of use some of that functionality later, particularly in the visualizations and the indicators and graphs. But yes, I would say the tool in terms of updating via text, entering additional data, pretty straightforward. There's a little bit of nuance to the data side in terms of depending on how complex the data set is that you're trying to update.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Hope that's clear. Maybe we can move on to the next question. How many people actually look at these websites, and which pages are most popular? How do you make use of SEO? Jonas, do you want to answer this first? Or how we provide analytics maybe to the cities?
Yes, there's several alternatives. I mean, we can include, if the city has analytics platforms it's using, we can include those trackers on the site, so the city collects the same platform the traffic information, or we can provide a open source solution for tracking traffic, and I guess there's no one answer as to what is average amount of traffic. It depends so much on whether or not the like any public website, if there's any traffic being kind of directed to the platform. It's a question of also where do you how do you link in the main navigation of the city website to it, and at least in the case of St. Paul, it's really easy, I guess, to in my experience was easy to find from the main navigation of the city's main website, easily finding the climate action and resilience dashboard. But that's something we often have a discussion or workshop about with as part of the onboarding process, how to make sure you're tracking. There's part of the answer is also and going towards how do you drive traffic is making sure that you're communicating in all the right places, so as you have the data up to date on the Kausal data management platform. It's not necessary to people to come and search for the right metric or action detail on the dashboard, but you can also embed individual action graphs and or indicator graphs and action details to other websites. So if you have specific web pages in the elsewhere in the council websites, it's a good idea to embed some interactive content from the Kausal platform to those pages. So then people who want to find out more can click through, but already get some information already on those pages.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Jonas. But I remember, Russ, like maybe you have some anecdote of people looking at the dashboard and maybe commenting, "Oh, that's a lot of actions in St. Paul."
Indeed, I don't know the latest in terms of the level of traffic. I should actually get an update on that. It was less maybe than we were hoping for, in part because with the launch, we put out a press release about the launch, but it wasn't really picked up by local media. You know, it's hard these days to break through in media. So a fair bit of chatter on social media about it and some interest that was generated that way. But for the folks who pay attention, we got a lot of really positive feedback from our local advocates. Some of them were very surprised at the number of actions that we already have underway and the just scope of all of it. I was thinking about that as Francie was presenting. It's just like, there's a lot, right? There, even for us kind of medium and smaller size cities, if we're taking this work seriously, there's a lot of information to convey. And some very positive direct feedback from some of our state legislators who had seen it. So it's a really good question, because it sort of comes back to what is the dashboard for ultimately, right? And I think we will have to drive some of the traffic there to see it. We initially did a soft launch before we were quite ready to have members of the public go look at it. It was there, but we weren't driving people to it. Now we're starting to drive people to it. We got some really early feedback on social media. Well, what about this? Something that was missing. And of course, we're working on it. It was actually one of the things that we were in process to try to add, but just didn't have quite in time for the launch.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Russ. Maybe the next one. This one is just a comment, not a question. As a city in the early stages of developing our tool to communicate climate action progress with Kausal, I appreciated hearing and seeing the experiences of St. Paul and Longmont. Thank you. And yeah, thanks for the comment. Next question, how much can the production of a corporate GHG inventory be automated? Bracket, assuming maybe monthly energy bills dropped in the folder. And similarly, can it be integrated with carbon budgeting? Well, I leave it
Yeah,
to the
it's
floor.
yeah, it's yeah, several questions I think there. So it's in terms of the GHG inventory side of things, the Kausal Paths tool enables you to assign specific people the data series for traffic, and some other people or transportation, and some other people for the buildings, and some other people for the energy, so that you can use that platform with the single sign-on and reminders functionality to pull in all that action data to be able to be much quicker in compiling those inventories. So it replaces, again, the Excel workbook approach to calculating and managing those data series and compiling, calculating the inventory. So if the question is about whether we can extract information from within energy bills, it's something we would have to look into. I mean, if it's a PDF bill, there's some complexity involved, but definitely if there's machine readable data already existing somewhere that can be tapped into, but yeah, we would have to look a bit deeper into the details of what would be the best technical solution there. But yeah, most definitely doable. But yeah, we can come back to the details there. And carbon budgeting side is also of interest to us, and we have ongoing work in progress to kind of help cities, pilot cities at the beginning now, to integrate the climate action sustainability work into their budgeting processes. So that's something we we'll probably have a separate webinar on that topic, but something we can also discuss and get feedback on if there's specific ideas or requirements.
I think the next question is very related to that, so maybe we can tackle both. Like, can you go into what specific calculations that Kausal makes?
Yeah, yeah. The Kausal Paths side is where calculations happen. So it's a fully fledged, robust modeling platform. So it does any calculations needed based on time series data inputs that are provided, and takes into account any kind of cross linkages between the different calculation nodes in the model, and of course the kind of hard part is for many types of actions to come up with the calculation model itself. I mean, many actions are so indirect that it's not really that easy to quantify the impacts. But what we recommend is kind of starting with the main actions, the ones that should have the biggest impact, and modeling out those impacts. In the case of Longmont with Francie, you had quite extensive existing Excel-based modeling done. So it was in that case it was a matter of for us to convert those Excel-based calculations into Python script into these calculation nodes that are then sitting inside the Kausal Paths tool, and no longer needing to crunch those numbers via Excel then.
Thank you, Jonas. Maybe Russ or Francie, do you want to comment anything? Or I guess it depends on the city we are working with, right, Jonas? The calculations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can move on to the next question. Is the platform a subscription model? What is the pricing? So maybe just a short, quick answer, Jonas.
Yeah, subscription-based model. So we take care of all the technical work that goes into setting it up and then running it on a continuous basis. So it's very easy for the city IT department. They are not burdened with the platform, and we do continuous improvement and new features into the platform, and everybody on the monthly or annual subscription benefit from all the new functionalities that we continuously build into the platform. From our view, it's early stages in terms of where these types of tools will be in a year or two. So it's a kind of a continuous process, and that's also why we want to make sure that as many cities as possible know about these tools, that they don't kind of end up spending time and resources in building kind of in-house solutions when
Right.
these open source tools are available.
So
our model is, as mentioned, open source. So I mean, we are looking to find cities to partner up with on an annual ongoing basis, but the open source nature of our product means that the cities can easily kind of find or include other partners in the project, local universities and so on. So we are very kind of focused on these kind of research collaboration projects and such also.
Right, thanks, Jonas. So basically, subscription. If you want a detailed pricing, you can contact us, and then maybe we'll get.
Well, yeah, price levels. Yeah, we'd have to discuss. It depends on the size of the city and the complexity of the case.
So maybe we, because of the time constraint, let's move on to finish up the questions that are left. Can the dashboard be converted into a report easily for annual reporting on progress to date? Maybe Russ or Francie, or maybe Russ, do you want to share something about this?
Just that I love that question. Not that I'm aware of, but I love the question. It would be a great feature.
So Jonas, I believe we do, or we are developing it.
Yeah. So we have to have a catch-up session soon to get the reporting templates up and running for St. Paul. Also, that's functionality we've just recently been building. Like you can do templates for different types of external reporting, CCAP, CDP, or whatever external reporting requirements, or then different internal things like a quarterly or annual report and so on. And once you build the templates for these ones, then it's easy for you to open up a new reporting period, and you can track who's filled in the required fields and so on. So that's functionality we've been putting an example of functionality that is available now to St. Paul also, as we've been developing it. So we will just have to.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yep. So is it possible to import the utility data from a utility monitoring software to your dashboard? Thank you.
Yeah, we have experience of tapping into these APIs. So if there's any machine readable data, especially if it's not just updating once a year, but something that's more real time, daily, weekly, even monthly data, might make sense to build a data importer so that the information is directly visible in real time on the dashboard.
Right. Yep. Thank you, Jonas. And I guess the last question was from the city of Saskatoon, who's asking for context of Russ and Francie. I guess we can take this offline, and then definitely we can connect the relevant parties. Right. Yeah. I guess those are all the questions. And right now is 7, just on time. Maybe I would like to thank again Russ and Francie and Jonas for sharing. Maybe just a quick, maybe one sentence, like from Russ and Francie, what is probably a tip to maybe a lot of city representatives who are here, who are trying to turn their climate plan into actions?
Sure, I'll jump in. As I mentioned, more work than you think upfront, but both the outcome and the process were really valuable for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think not exactly. The first thing that popped into my head was more about if you happen to be working with Kausal, I think it was a learning process for us about how to upload the information in a way that kind of helped. I think once we kind of figured out how to upload it for a first plan, then I think we provided the information in a much easier way to upload quickly for future plans. So I think just thinking about how you organize and upload the information could help streamline that process.
Yeah, I would say what if it needs to be one tip, I would say maybe start with what you already have. I mean, perfection is the worst enemy of good. So whatever you already have, put it online, make it interactive, and start communicating more. Don't worry if you don't have everything figured out, if you don't have metrics attached to every action, if you don't have all the actions figured out, you can add more later and build more granularity and kind of iterate later on. It's just important to start somewhere. And same goes for the modeling. If you don't have a perfect model, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't model at all or think about the impacts at all. But you should start with something. Use crude assumptions first, and then improve and build granularity and accuracy as you go along. Just making things more open and transparent rather than waiting around thinking, okay, we have a next plan coming up in 2 years. Maybe we'll include more transparency and communications into the next plan, but rather start with what you already have.
Sure. Yep. Thank you once again, and thank you for everyone who attends the webinar. Any further questions, you can send it to info@kausal.bank. With that, thank you again, and see you in the next webinar.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.